Mahat
Adinam
Adinam
Adaram Maharadinam.
Adaram Maharadinam.
Oh, this is 4878 for anyone who's got a device.
Yeah.
Adaram Maharadinam
Adaram Maharadinam
Pradhana
Pradana
Purusheshwaram
Purusheshwaram
Pradhana Purusheshwaram
Pradana Purusheshwaram
Pradhana Purusheshwaram
Pradana Purusheshwaram
Adarang Maharadinam
Adaram Maharadinam
Pradhana Purusheshwaram
Pradana Purusheshwaram
Brahma
Brahma
Dharayamanasya
Dharayamanasya
Brahma Dharayamanasya
Brahmadara Yamanasya
Brahma Dharayamanasya
Brahmadara Yamanasya
Trayo
Trayo
Lokas
Lokas
Chakampire
Chakampire
Trayo Lokas Chakampire
Trayo Lokas Chakampire
Trayo Lokas Chakampire
Trayo Lokas Chakampire
Brahma Dharayamanasya
Brahmadara Yanavasya
Trayo Lokas Chakampire
Trayo Lokas Chakampire
Atarang Maharadinam
Adaram Maharadinam
Pradhana Purusheshwaram
Pradana Purusheshwaram
Brahmadara Yamanasya
Brahmadara Yamanasya
Trayo Lokas Chakampire
Trayo Lokas Chakampire
Adarang Maharadinam
Adaram Maharadinam
Pradhana Purusheshwaram
Pradana Purusheshwaram
Brahmadara Yamanasya
Brahmadara Yamanasya
Trayo Lokas Chakampire
Trayo Lokas Chakampire Adaram Mahadadinam Adaram Mahadadinam Pradana Purusheshwaram Pradana Purusheshwaram Brahmadaraya Manasya Brahmadaraya Manasya Trayoloka Chakampire
Trayoloka Chakampire
Adaram Mahadadinam
Adaram Mahadadinam
Pradana Purusheshwaram
Pradana Purusheshwaram
Brahmadara Vanasya
Brahmadaraya Manasya
Trayolokas Chakampire
Trayoloka Chakampire
Adaram Maharadinam
Adaram Mahadadinam
Pradhana Purusheshwaram
Pradana Purusheshwaram
Brahmadaraya Manasya
Brahmadaraya Manasya
Trayoloka Chakampire
Trayolokas Chakampire
Ataram
Adaram
Repose
Repose
Mahat Adinam
Mahadadinam
of the material sum total known as the Mahatattva.
of the material sum total known as the Mahatattva.
Pradhana
Pradana
the chief.
the chief.
Purusha Ishvaram
Purusha Ishvaram
master of all living entities.
master of all living entities.
Brahma
Brahma
the supreme Brahman,
the supreme Brahman,
the personality of Godhead.
the personality of God.
Dharayamanasya
Dharayamanasya
having taken into the heart.
having taken into the heart.
Traya
Traya
the three planetary systems.
the three planetary systems.
Loka
Loka
all the planets.
all the planets
Chakampire
Chakampire
began to tremble.
began
and
to
to
tremble.
tremble.
So it's interesting the way that Prabhupada's translating some of the words here, especially this word Brahma, because that could mean many different things. It could mean the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it could mean the Brahman effulgence, it could mean the living entity, it would also mean Lord Brahma. But because of the context, and this is one of the things with Sanskrit, is depending on the context, words may be translated differently. And the context here, we see in the previous verses it was talking about Mahat Adinam, which refers to the sum total of Mahatattva, and Pradhana, meaning the chief, then Purusha Ishvara, the master of all living entities. So looking at the context of those words, then we see that Brahma is indicating the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, translation. When Dhruva Maharaj thus captured the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the refuge of the total material creation and who is the master of all living entities, the three worlds began to tremble responsively. When Dhruva Maharaj thus captured the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the refuge of the total material creation, and who is the master of all living entities, the three worlds began to tremble. This is quite extraordinary how it's being explained here how Dhruva Maharaj captured the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his, and the only way that you can capture Krishna, how's that? You can catch him with a noose and tie him up.
With what?
With a noose, a rope. Huh? How do you catch him?
Love.
Only with love. That's the only way we can catch a Krishna, with pure love. So it's a very, very important point that's being made here. In this verse, the particular word Brahma is significant. Brahman refers to one who not only is the greatest, but has the potency to expand to an unlimited extent. How was it possible for Dhruva Maharaj to capture Brahman within in his heart? This question has been very nicely answered by Jiva Goswami. He says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin of Brahman, for since he comprises everything material and spiritual, there cannot be anything greater than he. In the Bhagavad Gita also, the Supreme Personality of Godhead says, I am the resting place of Brahman. There's that verse in the 14th chapter, Brahmano hi pratishtaham, he mentions. Many persons, especially the Mayavadi philosophers, consider Brahman the biggest, all-expanding substance. But according to this verse and other Vedic literatures such as Bhagavad Gita, the resting place of Brahman is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as the resting place of the sunshine is the sun globe. Srila Jiva Goswami therefore says that since the transcendental form of the Lord is the seed of all greatness, he is the Supreme Brahman. Since the Supreme Brahman was situated in the heart of Dhruva Maharaj, he became heavier than the heaviest, and therefore everything trembled in all three worlds and in the spiritual world. So this is an indication also that Dhruva Maharaj's service or his practice wasn't material. It wasn't some sort of material thing that he would achieve. Just like we see sometimes different rishis, they'll perform various types of tapasya to get material benedictions, anima, legima, prapadishashti, all these different material benedictions where they can become lighter than the lightest, or bigger than greater than the greater, heavier than the heaviest, and all that sort of stuff. But still, they won't have any effect in the spiritual world because it's a material benediction they're after. It's a material thing, the result they're looking for, and also the practice they're doing is material because it produces material results. But we can see here with Dhruva Maharaj, because his performance was performance of bhakti, and bhakti is transcendental, therefore it also had effect in the spiritual world. So we can see the difference between an ordinary mundane activity and a transcendental activity. It is as Prabhupada would sometimes say, palena parachiyate, you judge a thing by the result. So we can see because it had a spiritual effect, and actually it was a very powerful transcendental performance that he was doing. The Mahatattva, or the sum total of the material creation, is to be understood to be the ultimate end of all universes, including all living entities therein. Brahman is the resort of the Mahatattva, which includes all material and spiritual entities. It is described in this connection that the Supreme Brahman, the Personality of Godhead, is the master of both Pradhan and Purusha. Pradhan means subtle matter, such as ether. Purusha means the spiritual spark, living entities who are entangled in the subtle material existence. These may also be described as para-prakriti and apara-prakriti, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna being the controller, so it gets a little bit complicated between the Pradhan and the Mahatattva. The Pradhan, as I understand it, is the non-conglomerate. It hasn't taken any shape, energy, all matter, etc. It takes no shape. But then when the time element is injected into it, and the desire of the jivas is injected into it, then it manifests as the Mahatattva. That's my understanding. But there are different explanations, so it does get a little bit confusing sometimes. Pradhan means subtle matter such as ether. Purusha means the spiritual spark, living entities who are entangled in the subtle material existence. These may also be described as para prakriti and apara prakriti, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna, being the controller of both the prakritis, is thus the master of Pradhan and Purusha. In the Vedic hymns also, the Supreme Brahman is described as Anta Bhavishta Shasta. This indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is controlling everything and entering into everything. He also makes that point in the Gita. He says, Aham Sarasha Prabho Makasavam Bhavatati Iti Matva Bhajante Mam Buddha Bhavas Manvata. That I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. And this is the thing that separates God from anyone else. If you look at anyone else in this creation, you can say they have a source. They have a mother, they have a father, whatever it is, however they're created, they have a source of creation. But God is that person who doesn't have a source of creation. And sometimes, when people sometimes they try to apply their mundane logic to understand God, and it's not possible. Through mundane logic, you can never understand the Supreme Person of Godhead. Because they say, well, okay, I had a mother, I had a father, where did God come from? No, but that's what makes him God, is he didn't come from anywhere. Everyone else has a source. Even all the other Vishnu incarnations, they have a source. Their source is Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Nadi Radi Govinda Sarvakaranakara. That he's Anadi Radi, he's the origin that has no other origin. Sarvakaranakaranam, he's the cause of all causes. And we also see that in the first canto, third chapter, I think it's verse 43. Ete Chanchakala Krishna, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Jiva Goswami defines this as the essential verse, or the Paribhasa Sutra of the whole Bhagavatam. He calls it the Emperor verse. And actually in the Krishna Sandarbha, he's written a whole essay on this one line, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Because Krishna, is Krishna too, but Bhagavan Swayam, he is the original. He is the one that everyone else has come from. Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All others have come from him. And then if we look in the 5th chapter of the Adi Lila, Krishna's Kaviraj has explained that excuse me, that all these there's what's that verse? Forgotten the verse. Hopefully it'll come to me. But he explains that all these different manifestations, all these different incarnations of Krishna, actually, or Vishnu or whatever, they're actually servants to Krishna, because Krishna is the only true master. Ekara Ishvara Krishna Ar Sabhyadrika. So Ekara Ishvara, there's one master, there's one controller. Ekara Ishvara Krishna, that's Krishna. Ar Sabhyadrika. All others dance as he makes them do so. Right? So only Krishna can be called the master. Even the different Vishnu forms, the different Narayan forms, Mahavishnu, the Karanakshay Vishnu, Gavadakshay Vishnu, Chiradakshay Vishnu, Shankarshan, Balaram, any of these personalities, they all serve Krishna because he's the origin. Anadi Radi Govinda. There's no other one before him. And all others dance as he makes them do so. So, and we see that 5th chapter of the Adi Lila is actually called the Glories of Nityananda Balaram. So it's talking about Lord Nityananda and how he's actually directly Balaram. And then it describes how Balaram is actually the Supreme Personality of Servant of Godhead. So whenever Krishna descends, Balaram also descends. Why? He comes to serve Krishna. So even though he's so powerful, Balaram means power, strength. Even though he's so strong, still Krishna's stronger. And one time in Vrindavan, Prabhupada, he said to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he said, who is stronger, Krishna or Balaram? And I don't know if you've seen Krishna Balaram in Vrindavan, but then Balaram has got his hand on Krishna's shoulder. And then same here too. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he said, Krishna is stronger because Balaram is resting on him. And he's holding up Balaram too. And so this is the thing, is Krishna is the origin. There is no one greater than Krishna. And this is why the understanding of the Bhagavatam, this is actually the supreme understanding. It's actually helping us to understand who is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Brahma Samhita 535 further confirms this. Adanta stat paramanu chayantanastam. He has entered not only the universe, but even the atom. So we see, I think it's on the cover of one of the second canto. I think it might be the second canto. You see that pinkish painting of the Chiradakshay Vishnu, the Lord in the heart, and he's also residing. He's in the heart of the atom. Which when I read this, I thought this was really interesting because when I was at university, I did a math science degree, and I never finished it. It was too boring. But one of the things when they talk about the structure of the atom is the different ways the electrons move. And then I can't remember which shells it is. I think it's in the first two shells that the electrons are moving this way and that way, which is like the four arms of. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if it's connected or anything, but I thought it was quite interesting. But he's holding everything together. He says in the Sutri Manikanari Va, he says in the Bhagavad Gita, that I'm the thread that holds everything together. Because it's just like, anyone who's dressed the deities, like when you have the pearls on the deities, sometimes the thread breaks. All these things, all the thread pearls are just bounce on the ground. And so without the thread, you don't have a string of pearls. You can't have a string of pearls without the thread. So in the same way, in this material universe, without the thread of Krishna going through everything, nothing would exist. Because he is the essence of everything. He is the super soul within the heart of all living entities. And actually, we're just there, desiring and feeling and things like that. We don't actually do anything. We have desires, but through the agency of the super soul, the body acts. So in the same way, we see with the atoms, the atoms are held together by Krishna. Everything is held together by Krishna. Just by his, and even that, he doesn't even do anything. He just desires, he just glances, and the whole thing stirs into motion. And even that is not him directly as a plenary portion. He just glances and the whole universe comes into creation. So this is Krishna's position. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.4, Krishna also says, Vistavyaham idam Krishnam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead controls everything by entering into everything. And he doesn't do that directly. He does that through a portion of a portion. It's not him directly who's doing that. So this is the nature of Krishna. He's so powerful that he manifests and controls everything just by a thought process. Who can do that? Even like, to manage this temple. Wouldn't it be nice if you just have to think about it and it all happen? All that prasadam yesterday went out just by thinking about it. Just imagine how much preaching we could do if all we have to do is think about it. So this is how powerful Krishna is. We have to expend so much energy to achieve anything. But Krishna is so powerful just by his thought process. The whole creation comes into being. And it goes on. All the various Vishnu incarnations with their various functions, like Karadakshay Vishnu, he lies down the causal ocean, the universes come out of the pores of his skin, and then he enters into each of these universe, the conglomerate elements, they go on, they accumulate on the seeds of the universes, and then he enters in as Karadakshay Vishnu, then the universes become hot, and he sweats, and he half fills the universe with his sweat, and he lies down on Seshashai, on the sweat, and it doesn't smell like our sweat. Very, very beautiful and fragrant. Yeah? And he lies down on that, and then from his navel sprouts Lord Brahma, and then Lord Brahma creates the whole universe, and then he enters into everything. There's the super soul. This all comes just from a thought. It's phenomenal. You know, the whole. You look at just this one universe, and there's countless billions. You cannot count how many universes are. Just like sometimes it's compared like a mustard seed, and it's like one seed in a bag. When we installed the Panchatattva in Mayapur, we had these bags of mustard seeds which were this big, like these big Hessian bags. I couldn't imagine how many millions and billions of mustard seeds were in this one bag. And that's what it's like. The universe is like that. They're unlimited, how many universes they are. But if you just consider this one universe and what goes on to make this universe function, the whole structure of the universe, all the devatas are there managing the various things, the upa-devatas, all involved in the universe, and so many, 14 levels of planetary systems, from Satyaloka down to Patala Loka. The whole structure there. And this is just one universe, and it's actually one of the smaller universes. So what goes on to this one universe is phenomenal. And it's all expanding from his energy, and all expanding from his personal form. And yet he doesn't become depleted. It's just like, when we have to do something, like if you have to make build a building, and you have to expend so much energy and you feel depleted as a result. Or you have to do anything, that's difficult, you feel depleted afterwards.
Depleted is this?
Huh?
Depleted.
Means your energy is reduced.
Oh?
Exhausted.
Thanks. Okay.
Yeah. And so you feel depleted by that act. But Krishna's never depleted. Actually, the opposite. He's constantly expanding. He's constantly expanding. One time, I mentioned this the other day, that Prabhupada was asked, I think it was one of Allen Ginsberg asked him, but someone in that era, in the early 60s asked, or in the mid 60s asked Prabhupada, is your Krishna so great that he can create a mountain that he can't lift? And Prabhupada said, yes, and then he will lift it. Because he's constantly expanding. And that's the difference. Things in this material world are constantly diminishing. They're born, they grow, they produce byproducts, they remain for some time, they dwindle, they vanish. This is the nature of the material world. Everything dwindles and vanishes in the material world. In the spiritual realm, it's the opposite. Everything's constantly expanding. Krishna's constantly expanding. And our service to Krishna is constantly expanding. So in the material world, sometimes we feel, there's so much service to do. And it's like sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming. But actually we're so fortunate because Krishna gives us so much service that we can't get into Maya. And we can just be constantly absorbed in serving Krishna. But in the spiritual world, it's ecstatic because the service is expanding constantly. There's so much we can do for Krishna. There's so many ways we can engage in a relationship with Krishna. So it's different. By associating constantly with the Supreme Personality in his heart, Dhruva Maharaj naturally became equal to the greatest Brahman by his association, and thus became the heaviest, and the entire universe trembled. So this is the nature of associating with the Lord, and this is actually the nature of deity worship, because this chapter, there's quite a lengthy discussion about deity worship. And we see that what happens starts around about verse 39 through to 61, and Narada Muni is instructing Dhruva Maharaj, and then around verse 50, that area there somewhere, he starts to tell Dhruva Maharaj about deity worship, and in verse 54 he says to because he's describing the beauty of the Lord and what the Lord looks like. And then in verse 54, he mentions he quotes that verse, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and he says to worship the form of the Lord with this mantra, according to time, place, and available conveniences and inconveniences. And Prabhupada, quite a nice purport there. he talks about a lot about, you know, how deity worship in different places is done differently according to the available facilities. And so then we see that, you know, up to verse 61, that Narad Muni is instructing Dhruva Maharaj, you know, how to fashion the deity. The deity can be made of different things, it can be made of earth and clay and all these different things, it can be made of marble and things like that. And so because Dhruva Maharaj is living in a forest, it's probably not easy for him to make a marble deity or a metal deity. So, you know, it would seem likely he's probably fashioned a deity out of earth. And you can, you know, like sometimes you'll see in India, especially in West Bengal, is they make these forms, they make the base of it with straw and they tie it up with other bits of straw to get the shape, and then they put mud over the top and they'll shape the mud and they'll paint it, and so it looks like a form of the Lord. Another way they do it also is sometimes you see, you go to Puri and they make a form on the sand, like a mound like that, or sometimes they'll write the name of the deity. And here we see that Narad Muni explains to Dhruva Maharaj that you worship the deity with the mantra, which is non-different from the Lord. So by, you know, like sometimes you'll see in Radharaman temple, for instance, in Vrindavan, you'll see they always say Radharaman, but you only see Raman. So where's Radha? Sometimes people say, oh, she's in the clothes, but actually no, there's a gold plate sitting there which has Sri Radha written on it, and so she's present in her name. And they'll offer clothes and jewelry and things like that to the plate which has her name on. So the transcendental personality is considered to be non-different from the name. There's Abhinatam Nama Namino. The name is non-different from the Lord, and the same with his intimate associates. The name is not different. So then Dhruva Maharaj, Narad Muni is giving quite extensively, you know, from verse 39 to 61. He's giving Dhruva Maharaj a lot of instructions on how he can become absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and that's what he does. And through this process, he says it. So what happens is after the instructions, then Narad Muni goes to see Uttanapad, goes to his sittings to see Uttanapad, because he's thinking, well, Uttanapad must be pretty worried because, you know, his son's disappeared and he doesn't know what's happened to him. He's gone to the forest, he might be eaten by tigers or wolves or something like that. And so then Narad Muni goes to see Uttanapad. He said, "Oh Maharaj, you're looking very withered and you know, like emaciated because you've just been constantly absorbed in his son, worrying about his son." And so, but Narad Muni doesn't tell him, well, you're in Maya. It's really interesting. He doesn't tell him, well, you know, you shouldn't be attached to your son. You shouldn't worry. You know, this is all just mundane attachment. He doesn't tell him that. He tells him, actually, no, your son's okay because he's absorbed in the process of devotional service. You know, I've instructed him in the science of Krishna consciousness now. He's gone to Vrindavan. And so we see there's many examples in the Bhagavatam of how great personalities are attached to their devotee children. And so it's sending us the message also, is telling us that it's not, you know, it's not like it's Maya to be attached to your children. It's actually, it's Maya not to be attached. You know, because not really Maya, but it's like it's detrimental to that relationship not to be attached. You know, it's important that, you know, we are attached. You know, we demonstrate affection to our children, demonstrate affection to our partner, etc. Because otherwise, how does the relationship function? You know, relationships have certain dynamics that are part of the relationship, and it's like, you know, we can't be grihastas and be detached from our partners or our children. It just doesn't function. It just doesn't help them to feel secure in the relationship, and it doesn't help them to feel stable in the process of devotional service. So it's but we don't become attached. The thing is, like, what happens in the material world is we become attached to the external, the body, and we think the body is everything, but actually that's not what the attachment is about. The attachment should be focused on the person, the devotee, you know, and having this relationship. And then, so after Narad Muni goes to see Uttanapad, then from verse 71 through the end of this chapter, it describes Dhruva Maharaj's worship and how he achieves the goal of that devotional service. And it's interesting because it talks about his increasing how he's becoming increasingly advanced, but also he's becoming increasingly detached. But at every point, as said, and thus his worship continued. So he didn't give up his worship of Krishna. You know, there was difficulties, there was austerities, there was so many things going on, but he didn't give up his worship at any time. So this is also for us a good lesson, because we can understand that even though difficulties may come in devotional service, even though austerities, different challenges they come, we don't give up the service. So Dhruva Maharaj is setting such a wonderful example for us to follow in devotional service, that even though there was challenges for him, austerities, etc., he didn't give up the service. And because of this determination to serve Krishna, and in association with Krishna, through the process of deity worship, then he actually became, what did Prabhupada say here? Dhruva Maharaj naturally became equal to the greatest. It's naturally, because, and that's the process of deity worship, because when you worship the deity, the deity, it says Pratima Nahi Tumi Saksha Prajandanandana, the deity is no different from Krishna. It's not like the deity is a representation. The deity is Krishna. And it mentions, I can't remember where it is, but in one of the scriptures it mentions, there's 5 incarnations of the Lord. There's Para, Vyuha, Vaibhav, Vilas, and Archa. These are all incarnations of Krishna. So the Archa is actually Krishna directly manifested before us. And if we serve the deity with that consciousness, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So Krishna explains that if we serve with that consciousness, that this is directly Krishna before me, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I am his servant, then we'll actually realize Krishna. We'll see Krishna there in the deity. When Prabhupada installed the deities, small deities in Los Angeles in 1968, maybe, he at the end of the lecture, he said, if we take up this proper mood of worship, he said, then one day that Krishna, he will talk to you. He will talk to you. He makes that point really clearly. You can actually have a direct relationship with the deity if you have this proper mood. If you understand that this is Krishna directly before me, and if we serve him in that way. And this is what Dhruva Maharaj is doing. He's worshipping the deity. He's understanding that this, and Narada Muni says this in the verse, you see the deity as directly Krishna. And if you worship in that way, then Krishna will manifest before us. And the universe trembled. In conclusion, a person who always concentrates on the transcendental form of Krishna within his heart can very easily strike the whole world with wonder at his activities in the heart or in the form of the Lord and the deity. This is the perfection of yoga performance, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 6:47, Yoginam Apisarve Sham. Of all yogis, the bhakti yogi who thinks of Krishna always within his heart and engages in his loving transcendental service is the topmost. Ordinary yogis notice how Prabhupada says ordinary yogis, can exhibit wonderful material activities known as Astasiddhi, 8 kinds of yogic perfection. But a pure devotee of the Lord can surpass these perfections by performing activities which can make the whole universe tremble. So Prabhupada's pointing out here that, as I said before, is these yogic perfections. They're just external. They're just material perfections. You become, you can create a planet, or you can become so small, or you can take come of Vayasita city, where you can take something from a distant place. Prabhupada mentioned he had a teacher who had when he was at Scottish Churches College, who had a guru who knew this. I think it's called Kamvayasita or something like that, where you could take something from a far distant place. One time the disciple asked, he'd like some pomegranate from Kabul or something like that, and so he extended his hand and took it, and it came. It was wet when it got there. And so he said, go into the next room and see it's there. I remember when I was a child, we saw this movie called Aladdin and the 40 Thieves, I think it was called, or something like that. And it was about Aladdin, this Aladdin who had a lamp, That's a well-known story in the Middle East. Anyhow, so there was one of these guys. He was in the movie. He had a mystic city where he had this Kumbhayasata city, where he could extend his hand. But what they did in the movie, because they didn't really understand it, is like his hand became rubber, and just like just extended like that. But it's something like that, is they can extend their hand and take anything from a different place. But Prabhupada, like even though they may have these different perfections, and people see that and think, oh wow, they must be God. But it's just some material ability. Like you'll see, like in this world, sometimes yogis, they can manifest a little bit of ash on their hand. And people, oh my God, that must be God to do that. Or they can make a little bit of gold, must be God. But right now, there's some bushfires here burning La Palma. Yeah? How much ash is coming there? Right? Mountains of ash. Right? So these are all just material perfections. There's nothing amazing when you can consider what God can do. Someone who has a mystic perfection, he can create a planet by his yoga city. Only one planet, where he can expand himself into 8 simultaneous forms, but they all do exactly the same thing at the same time. Whereas you look at Krishna, he expanded himself into 16,108 forms. And you can read this in the Krishna book. Narad Muni came to visit Krishna, and Krishna was going to, and he was going to because Krishna had 16,108 palaces, and he was visiting the different palaces, and he was amazed how Krishna was doing something different in every palace. In one palace he was interacting with his wife, in another palace he was playing with his children, in another palace he's getting his daughter married, and so many different things going on. And then Prabhupada says, why only 16,108 wives? He can marry 16 billion wives and maintain them all and make them all perfectly happy. In this material world, even to make one wife happy is difficult, or one husband happy is difficult, let alone 16,000 or 16 million or 16 billion. Krishna can satisfy the whole universe. Yasmin tusti jagat tusta. When Krishna is happy, the whole universe is happy. So this is the nature of Krishna, and it's also describing the nature of the devotee of Krishna, especially the perfected devotee of Krishna, that his perfection was so powerful that the whole universe trembled as a result of that perfection. So this is a wonderful story. We're coming to the conclusion of it now. It's a very, very wonderful story. Okay, any questions, comments or corrections? Yes, Prabhu.
One question. Thank you both. Very nice class. Enlightening you guys. There is one Mataji I want to ask, who comes here, senior Mataji. She had 4 children. They were brought in Krishna consciousness. They were distributing books, and one of them, he committed suicide a few years ago. So this Mataji is not recovered. Still so much affected, emotionally. So you mentioned attachment to the children is to our kids because they are the bodies. So it's good for us. It's not bad. The opposite is good. But in this case, because I was talking yesterday to her and I was telling her that it is natural what you are feeling, but it's also good to leave it aside a little bit, to focus that is not affecting you negatively in your life. That because how long can you stay lamenting? How many years can you stay like this? It's in a suffering condition. So because you mentioned, I just remember. I just started thinking about her. So what would be in that case? That attachment in a normal situation is good, but in this case, what would you recommend?
The thing is, like, the attachment's natural, and also the grieving process is natural. Even you see here, it's like when in the 3rd canto, for instance, when Krishna departed, Uddhava, when he met with Maitreya, he discussed with him for some time, and Maitreya was asking questions about not Maitreya, Vidura. Vidura was asking him questions about Krishna, and then for some time Uddhava was responding, but it got to the point where he became so overwhelmed with separation from Krishna that he said, I can't talk anymore. You have to go speak to my Rishi. You know? So we see that this like the grieving process is natural, and for a mother to grieve for their child is perfectly natural. You know, this is perfectly natural. The only thing I would encourage is just continue with the process of bhakti as best you can. You know, what's that verse in the Gita? So just continue with the process of bhakti, and in time, it may take some time. You know, I mean, for a mother's child to die is one thing, you know, because it's actually considered unnatural for the children to die before the parents. It's considered unnatural. You know, there's that story of when you know that Brahmana's son died, and then he came to Arjuna, and Arjuna went and you know, found the child and brought it back. You know that story in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam?
Yes.
You know, and actually what it was just a trick by Mahavishnu, because he wanted to take darshan of Krishna. You know? But you know, so it's unnatural for the child to leave before the mother. But you know, but especially when the child commits suicide, you know, I mean, I couldn't because you know, I've got 2 children. I couldn't imagine what the parents would be feeling, because she must be feeling like, you know, I failed. You know, that this child, you know, is so distressed and so dissatisfied in their life that they had to end their life.
She told me that this boy was planning for 1 whole year how to commit suicide.
He
was planning for 1 whole year,
yeah.
because his friends, you know,
Yeah.
he was like a champion of Colombia in South America, swimming, you know, races. I saw a picture with all the medals and all that. So he was like very nice, beautiful boy, you know, strong. So I mean, she could never imagine that he was planning for 1 whole year how to kill himself.
But imagine how she feels, you know, that her son was so distressed that he had to do that, you know, even though he has material success or whatever, you know. So I can understand how someone would feel distressed about that and struggle with it, struggle to overcome the grief. It'd be a very, very difficult situation. And I think for us, you know, rather than offering solutions, because, you know, when you're in that situation, the last thing you want is a solution. Rather than offer solutions, just be compassionate and try to be understanding and try to be supportive. Because solutions, and especially like men tend to go straight to solutions. That's the tendency of men. They tend to go straight for solutions. And generally with ladies, it's not what they're looking for. They're just looking for understanding. You know, and so I think it's very important for us to be, especially in situations like that, to be compassionate and try to understand. And that's the best thing. And just be supportive. You know, and communication is something, just like you're saying, you know, for 1 year he was planning, but she didn't know. You know, so it means there's obviously a disconnect between them, that she didn't know that. And I think, you know, I see some devotees in their relationships with their children, they communicate really well. But by and large, I see devotees don't communicate very well with their children. And generally it's because the parents are always telling the children what they should be. You know, you need to be, you know, why aren't you chanting around? Why aren't you following the regular principles? Why aren't you doing, you know, kids don't want to hear that, therefore they shut down. They just don't, I don't talk to my parents, because every time I talk to them, they judge me. You know? We can't be judging people. You know? Judge not lest ye be judged. You know? That's I think it's a biblical saying. You know, if you judge others, you'll be judged. So let's not judge others. Let's be compassionate. It's just like, you know, we're out there doing prasad distribution yesterday. We're not judging those people. We know where they're at. There's no need to judge them. We just be compassionate, give them prasadam, and hoping by taking prasadam that their consciousness will evolve. They'll actually come to the human form of life, rather than, you know, because you look at these people, mostly they're living like lower than animals. The way they live, it's just, you know, we heard them all moaning and carrying on last night. You know, they're living like lower than animals, most of these people, just their activities. So let's not judge them. Be compassionate, and help them wherever we can, support them wherever we can. That's what people in this world are very, very distressed, incredibly distressed, because they've forgotten their relationship with Krishna. So we need to help them to remember that. We're not going to do that by pointing the finger. We're going to do that by compassion and love. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yes, Prabhu.
Srimad Radha Balabji.
Very nicely you mentioned about how to have compassion, and especially when we see people around, what is the best we can do, because we directly go and preach them, it's very hard. They're not accept, and of course sometimes even we tell about chanting and all, they'll not that they'll definitely not accept very easily. What's the best we can do for others in terms of compassion?
But it really depends on the situation. Like some people are open to hearing. Like I was in Barcelona last week, and we went on a Harinam on Monday. It was Monday, yeah, probably Monday, and there was some people who were just like a group of guys. They were just like mocking us, like young men having fun, kind of thing. But one of the guys, he pushed his friends back, and he came and joined the Harinam, and he walked with us for about half an hour.
Oh.
He was dancing, he was grabbing my hand, and he's getting me to dance and stuff like that,
Yeah.
So you see, like he's more receptive. So I took him around, I showed him the mantra, stuff like that. So in that situation, give him the mantra, give him the contact of the temple, things like that. In other circumstances, that won't work. So give them prasad, maybe give them a book. Just be nice to them.
Yeah.
Like I see, my wife. I see her when she interacts with a lot of people when she's going out shopping and whatever the things you do when you go to town, sort of thing. And it's rarely she'll tell them about Krishna consciousness directly, but she has such how would you say it? Like powerful, but they're very, very nurturing relationships with people. Because she cares about them, and they sense that, and that's the one thing. Like when we read Lila Amrita, I'm actually getting towards I'm on the 17th chapter of the Lila, so I've got 3 chapters left, and I'm going to start reading the Lila Amrita. But there's one thing you get when you read about Prabhupada is the devotees really got this strong sense that Prabhupada loved them. One time, one of the devotees said Prabhupada, "Oh, Prabhupada, everyone loves you." And he says, "Yes, and I love everyone." And so that and love means you're not trying to control. Love means that you want to give them the best. And ultimately that means Krishna consciousness. But sometimes you have to kind of go the long way around to get them to come to Krishna consciousness. So it's not just a matter of like you remember what it was like in Melbourne back in the day, the Sankirtan scores, you get the big, Haribol kind of thing, It's not about getting the big score. It's about, having compassion and helping that person to realize who they are. And it may take some time, and sometimes it's quick. So,
Thank you.
So if we develop the sense of mamata, belonging of the deities, we can develop a relationship with them.
Yeah, definitely. It's just like I often compare it to with children. Like the mother tends to be more inclined to have a relationship with the child or love for the child because she's carrying the child within her womb for 9 months, 10 months. I mean, of course, Congo can correct me on this because I'm not a mother, I'm a father. But then with the father, the relationship is more inclined to come from the service. Feeding the baby, bathing, changing the clothes, things like that. So from the service. So in the same way with Krishna, through cultivating this relationship of service, then the attachment develops. It's just a natural thing. So as you serve the deity more and more, then your love for Krishna will naturally. Prabhupada, in a Bhagavad Gita lecture he gave in I think it was 1972, on Bhagavad Gita 7.1, he was saying that the deity worship's for neophytes. He said also, anyone who wants to develop their attachment for deity worship, they must do anyone who wants to develop their attachment for Krishna must do deity worship. It's just natural. It's just like we see here. Naturally, Dhruva Maharaj developed his attachment because he was so intensely engaged in devotional service for the deity. He naturally developed that affection. So the same for us. If we engage in service to Krishna, then naturally we'll develop that affection. You know, you feed Krishna, you bathe Krishna, you dress Krishna, you wake him up, you put him to bed. Naturally, your affection is going to develop. But it means we have to follow the rules and regulations so that the service being offered in a proper way. It's not like you know, with any aspect of devotional service, but especially with deity worship, we don't just make up our own process, especially on the stage of Vaidhi Bhakti, because it means following rules. So, you know, yeah, that's how we develop it, by following the rules. Then, by following the rules, by engaging in the process, the love, karayudaya, it's there in the heart, it comes out. Very powerful process. Okay. It's okay, boss? It's okay?
Yeah, boss.
Very good. Thank you very much for the Prabhupada.
Jai Jai.
Salveta Bhaktivinoda ki
Jai.
Jai. Jai Gaur Premanand ki
Jai Gaur.
Jai.